Welcome to Food Stories from Here, a fortnightly podcast from Napoleon's Nose Creative Media. I'm Clare McGinn. Here means Northern Ireland, where I work and live. It also means this moment, the stories, people and food shaping where we are now. If you enjoy the podcast, please share it and subscribe on Spotify, Apple or wherever you listen in the podosphere.
We started Food NI in about 2008, and to be fair, I don't know that Northern Ireland had a wonderful food story then. We certainly were a massive supplier of food to GB. I think at that time we supplied approximately 20% of the beef that went into England. But what we didn't have back then was diversity and entrepreneurs.
This October, the BBC Food and Farming Awards are coming to Belfast for the first time in their 26-year history. They're going to be held at Titanic Belfast, which is a dramatic stage for a food story that has changed beyond all recognition, certainly over the past decade. The awards are supported by Food NI and DERA, that's the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. And I think the timing is really significant. They come 10 years after 2016, which was Northern Ireland's Year of Food and Drink. For many people in the industry, that year didn't create the quality. The quality was already here. But what it did do was give the industry a stage. And maybe more importantly, it gave people permission to see what was already being made here with fresh eyes. In this episode, I'm asking what has changed in Northern Ireland food over the past decade, what still needs to change, and why these awards coming to Belfast feels like more than just a date in a diary. You're going to be sick of me saying it, but I'm going to tell you that nominations are open now at bbc.co.uk/food awards. That's all one word. They are free to enter, which is really unusual in this area. And the deadline is 12 noon on Monday, the 15th of June, 2026. So the clock is ticking. I've decided to call this second episode Open the Curtains. For it, I spoke to Michele Shirlow, who's the CEO of Food NI. Food NI is a really important organisation. It was set up in 2008 to champion Northern Irish food and drink. And Michele has been at the heart of the story of the sector's growth, confidence and collaboration ever since.
Really, since about 2010, we have a really thriving artisan sector with a really entrepreneurial spirit, as well as still the big suppliers who are a really important part of the UK's larder.
So how did it start for you? It does feel to me that you're somebody who saw the potential in this from way back.
Well, part of it was the change in the political situation in Northern Ireland, which prior to the Good Friday Agreement, undoubtedly a lot of innovation had been suppressed. But I had been fortunate enough to travel with a job I actually had and could never understand why when you went to other countries they had such pride and passion and such belief in their own food culture, and yet back in those days, around the early 2000s, it was almost like our food culture had kind of been forgotten or wiped out. And so it really started because of the massive political change, but also people got really excited about it, and there was a real spirit of innovation, and it was like people really wanted to do things like make a farmhouse ice cream or make an artisan cheese or make cider. So all these people with great ideas sprung up and started to bring absolutely fantastic products to market. And then they started winning awards. And they would win Great Taste Awards and Blast na Éireann Awards. And not only would they win awards, but sometimes they won the Supreme Champion. So we had people like Peter Hannan, who got Supreme Champion twice, and with McCartney's Butchers, who got it in 2012, and then we had Mill Bay Oysters, who got Blast na Éireann champion in, I think, 2018, and we had recently success there too with Morelli's ice cream. So the Northern Irish products were very, very high quality, and then obviously a little bit of innovation encouraged others, and so more and more people got involved.
So what you heard there is Michele describing a shift from supply to story. Northern Ireland had been feeding people elsewhere for years, but the language around food here was often practical and agricultural and industrial. It definitely wasn't confident, and it was definitely not visible. But then a different food culture began to appear. Smaller producers, new products, more awards, as you've just heard, and more pride. And one of the people who became central to that story was Peter Hannan. Peter is the larger-than-life founder of Hannan Meats and the meat merchant in Moira. He's known for his Himalayan salt-aged beef, for his sugar pit bacon, for his restless invention and a serious habit of winning awards. He's got hundreds of them. In 2018, he won the Derek Cooper Outstanding Achievement accolade at the BBC Food and Farming Awards. When I met him in Moira, he was in no doubt about what the awards coming to Belfast could mean.
We are hugely excited to have the awards coming to Northern Ireland this year. We thought we'd have got you here about 10 years ago, but you're just running late. But you're most welcome and we're tremendously excited. I think, as opposed to other award initiatives, the BBC Food and Farming Awards are hugely unique. They shine a spotlight that no other awards do, because it's not lining your food up for, an award or this, that and the other. It's huge about community. A lot of it is what is unforeseen on a daily basis. I would encourage everybody in Northern Ireland to embrace it and cut the ropes, because there's a spotlight coming. And it'll only shine if you pull back the curtains and let it in. We're very good at not opening the curtains in Northern Ireland.
That image has stayed with me. Open the curtains. Because this isn't only a story about awards, it's a story about confidence, about a place learning to say what we do is good, it's ours, and it deserves to be seen more widely. So tell me about 2016, because that was kind of a key year.
We actually came up with this idea of a year of food in 2012, and it took us a while to get it across the line. But we came up with this idea that we would have 2016 as a special year where we would highlight our food and drink culture. So we took a theme for every month. So January was breakfast month because of the Ulster Fry. February was Love Local because of St Valentine's Day. March was around heritage and traditions because of St Patrick's, and so it went on. And we looked at existing food festivals, things like when Dairy Week was in June, so June was a dairy month. And we also looked at the food calendar in Northern Ireland when products were in season, and we developed a theme for every month. And it was almost like we created this platform or a stage for the industry, for them to really strut their stuff. So they danced on this stage, and they came up with loads of new food tourism experiences, loads of new product ideas, and also a lot of collaboration. And you saw companies start to work together on the Year of Food and Drink. And as a result of Year of Food and Drink, there was a massive increase in the perception of our food. Tourism and I do an attitude study with people who visit here on their leaving, and there was a 23% rise in visitor attitudes in 1 year alone towards our food and drink. But not only that, it gave people a lot of heart and a lot of encouragement. So we decided that we would enter the World Travel Market Best Food Destination in 2018, and we were stunned. We won. We came first, and we were up against San Sebastian, Cork, another region in Spain, but Northern Ireland won because of our Year Food and Drink. So Year Food and Drink was a really important springboard for the whole industry in terms of their own self-belief, their own desire to collaborate, and our reputation as a food region.
Michele talks there about 2016 as a stage, and Peter talks about it as a confidence moment. And those two ideas really mesh together. A stage is no use if people are too shy to walk onto it. And confidence is really hard to build if nobody has given you a place to stand in the spotlight.
The Year of Food couldn't have come at a better time for us. It highlighted a number of things that were going on. There had been, quite a bit of success prior to that. I mean, George, when he won the Supreme Championship of Great Taste, and followed by us winning it the following year, and then all sorts of things happening all in one time, and then followed quickly by Year of Food. People looked at it, you couldn't have avoided it. You could visibly see people saying, that's something like what I'm doing. Maybe I'm not too bad at doing that. And one thing, we produce world-class products here. I mean, really world-class products. The biggest thing that I saw happen, Claire, was confidence.
Confidence only means something if there is substance underneath it. And with Peter, that substance is craft. He talks about meat and flavours the way some people talk about music. It's all about the timing, the texture, his instincts, repetition and taste, getting something right and not letting it out before it's ready.
2011, we got a 3-star award for a bacon chop that we had produced. And then the following year, we weren't happy with it going in, but we put it in anyhow. We put in guanciale. And it got 3 stars. And I think by the time we put it back in for 3-star judging day for the Supreme Champion, I think we had got it to where it needed to be. But that was purely fortuitous. It was, we knew we just wanted to, tweak it a little bit and dry it a bit longer and do this, that and the other. And it fell into place for 2012. But yeah, 15 years ago, 2011, we got our first 3-star, and we really genuinely thought in the Great Taste Awards that all our birthdays had landed together. We had no notion of ever getting a second one, because if you get one of them in your lifetime, it usually does. But I think today we've got 36 of them. We innovate quite a bit. I mean, the salt aged beef, the sugar pit bacon, if we're going doing it, we try and do it properly. I mean, I remember the year, it could be 10 years ago, and we wanted to put a burger into the Great Taste Awards. And the vibe was, don't bother with a burger, no burger's ever going to get 3 stars. But I wanted to put it in anyhow. So there was a lot of arguing going on because I wanted to put it in unseasoned and say, sprinkle it like a steak at the point of cooking. And the boys said, no, they won't do that, so we're going to put in the seasoned one. And I said, well, no, hold on, I want the unseasoned one. So anyhow, there was a row. And I said, do you know what, lads? Everybody put a tenner on the table. We'll put the 2 of them in. And I said, whichever one does best, I said, claims the 20 quid. Well, the 2 of them got 3 stars. So we invest a lot in innovation. We invest a lot in people. And, the ethos round here is, if we're going to do it, let's do it really right. So you get recognition from that point of view because, consistency is hugely important. But we actually care about every steak that lands on somebody's plate. It's got to be exceptional. It's got to be value. It's got to be all those things. We get out of bed every morning actually caring about those things. So, we've been hugely privileged and fortunate to have been recipient of, as you say, hundreds of awards. We don't focus on that. That comes behind. If we're doing something, we try and do it as well as it can be done, and we don't let it out to play until we're happy with it.
I think there's a danger with awards that they can sound like decoration. But in Peter's telling, the award itself isn't the point. The work is the point. The award is what happens when the work, the standards and the persistence become visible. One of the striking things about both Michele and Peter is that neither of them talk about food as a solo act. Again and again, they come back to the theme of collaboration. The producer, the farmer, the customer, the chef, the retailer, the organisation, all neighbours who know someone who can help. And Peter has a simple view of food. It brings people to the same table.
Food is the ultimate common denominator. If you bring a problem into this room and you bring the people with the problem, and you give me 2 hours and I'll put food down along the centre of the table, we will have the problem resolved by the time we're opening the door and everybody's gone. It is the most powerful thing to bring people together. I think about 10 or 12 years ago with Mark Hicks, we brought these big sharing steaks into London. But we kind of made it everyday stuff. If there's 2 of you going to have a steak, well, do you know what? Why don't you buy a big one and share it? The difference in me putting you down a 10-ounce sirloin and saying, now Clare, you eat that and I'll eat mine, as opposed to when we put a big one, 20 ounces in the centre and it's sliced out and say, come on, we'll share that. That's a totally different experience.
Now that could sound romantic if he left it there, but Peter gives us a very practical example of what collaboration looks like.
There's a lot of help out there. I mean, I remember I had a lady in here, she came to see me and she was almost in tears. She had a problem with a product she was producing. And I listened to her and she said, will you taste my product? I always believed don't tell somebody a lie because they're going to make a decision based on what you tell. And she was good enough to say, well, I tried. And I looked across the table at her and I said, darling, I said, that's truly awful. And she looked at me and I thought she was going to be in tears again. And I said, but we can help you. So she proceeded to tell me all the things she was having problems with. And I said, don't worry, this was a Saturday morning. I said, I'll have somebody here in an hour to help you with the labelling and to help you with this, that and the other. And I rang lovely, lovely lady who we'd helped many times before. And she came down and she took her and she went back to her place and they got everything sorted out. And I said, on Monday morning, I said, go to Cookstown and see Paul Clark because I need to tweak this. But I said, we'll get it right. And 3 weeks later, she just called. I didn't know she was coming. And she said, you've no idea how grateful I am. She says, in the last 3 weeks, I've managed to do more than I did in the 3 previous years.
The reason I like that story is because it isn't glossy. It's not a brochure version of collaboration. It's someone telling the truth kindly, opening a door and helping another producer move forward. And Peter says that Food NI has been central to that wider culture.
It's the understated nucleus. Now, I have a declaration. I sat on the board of Food NI for, I'm not sure, 8 or 10 years. I'm no longer a board member. I came off it, I don't know, late last year or early this year. But I've been steeped in its culture. All of the time, I was fortunate that Michele was holding the steering wheel. And basically all we did was kind of provided the fuel to get to the next destination. What they have done and what they have managed to do, once again, they don't shout about it. They just operate under the radar and get everything done. Year of Food, to say, getting these awards here, everything like that. It's wonderful, and it has built community, and it has been so instrumental in all of the things that have been good. But nobody screams about it. There's nobody out there, looking for credit or am I great or one thing or another. It's the silent success of people who are operating to the highest calibre and just chiseling away every morning. They get up and one thing and another, and look what we've built. I mean, this Northern Ireland in the last 15 years travelled more than it did in the 50 years before it.
A celebration is stronger when it leaves room for the unfinished work. Michele is clear that Northern Ireland has proved the quality of its produce, but the next challenge is different. Health, sustainability, skills, making sure good produce translates into good food on our plates.
Now there's a food strategy framework in Northern Ireland. We're the first region of the UK to have it, which is great. But we've realised that there needs to be a big shift and a big focus on public health and on key issues such as sustainability. So we're working to try to work with the industry to inform them about the terrible health statistics that there are, particularly in Northern Ireland. Despite the fact that we have such wonderful produce, it doesn't necessarily translate into good food on plates. And also to work and to highlight their sustainability stories, because if people are given the evidence or the facts, they will respond. And already this year in the Food Pavilion we're delighted. We've probably got about 6 new product innovations in healthy foods.
And Peter comes at the same issue from another angle, children. For him, food education is not an extra or a nice to have. It's a life skill.
Everything is about investing in the youth. If I was in charge for a day, I would totally change the whole way we educate kids. I'm a huge fan of the Japanese way of doing things. Kids don't do an exam until they're 16. They go into school every day to learn manners, respect. They cook all their own dinners. Every meal they eat in school is cooked by the kids themselves. They know where the food comes from, this, that and the other. And we're not teaching that to kids. What are we looking at? What are we investing in? And there's no point in picking it up 15 years later. You've got to go back to the root. You've to nourish the root, and then what grows above the ground is a very, very different thing. Kids are like sponges. They pick it up really, really quick. Oh God, I got into awful trouble. My daughter, one evening she said, Dad, we were talking about making sausages in school today. I told the teacher that you made sausages and that I'd speak to you that we could maybe organise a trip. And I said, how many is there, sweetheart? And she said, she says, I think there's 26. But she says, there's 2 classes. And I said, is that 26 in total? No, she says 27. Well, I said, you cannot bring one class and not have the other. Oh my God, you've no idea. Insurance, veterinary. We had them all dressed up in little white elves costumes. We got these elves costumes. And we closed the manufacturing for the day. And we basically made it into a party place for 26 kids. And then because I wouldn't do one without the other, 2 weeks' time, the other class has to come. So we had to do it twice. But do you know what? They would tell you here, any of the management would tell you here, that in all our 40 years or whatever it is we're here, they don't ever remember a day like it. Do you see, to watch kids become submerged in food? They made their own sausages, we cooked their own sausages. They came here like for 6 hours or something like that. It wasn't just a sort of a wheel in, a wheel out. No, if you're coming here and we're closing the place, let's get some benefit out of it for you. I met the headmaster out of the school sometime earlier in the year, and he says, Pete, they still talk about that day. He says, the teachers and everything, like the day that they went and made sausage. He says, I don't suppose there's any chance we could do it again. And I said, thank God my daughters have left your school. And it's not like a day in school with a geography book. You know, this is a day learning about food, making things, cooking things. You know, the amount of people who cannot cook as kids, like it's frightening, and we have to eat 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Is there any single more important thing that a kid could take out of school than a little bit of a culinary thing where they can actually cook themselves breakfast, lunch and dinner?
The sausage elves are definitely a funny story, but it's also serious, because if food is culture, business, health, farming, family and memory, then learning how to cook isn't a small thing. It's one of the ways we stay connected to our place, to our identity, to ourselves. So, 10 years on from food and drink, the story has definitely moved. Northern Ireland doesn't have to prove that the quality exists in quite the same way. It has already done that. The bigger questions now are about health and sustainability, about skills and confidence, and whether the next generation can see food and farming as a place of invention and not just inheritance. For Michele, the BBC Food and Farming Awards coming to Belfast in the autumn is a chance to show everyone else how far the region has come and where it could go next.
People from this region have been entering the Great Taste and they've been entering Blast. I don't know why they haven't entered Food and Farming Awards in great numbers before, but certainly we'll be spreading the word and encouraging them. And I think there'll be really stiff competition for Food Hero from this region, because the quality is superb, the innovation is superb. So I would say to people, give it a go. You can either self-nominate or you can nominate somebody else. And we've already been talking to some of the big retailers about who would they nominate. So we want a really strong entry from Northern Ireland, and we don't want people to be hiding their light under a bushel.
So here's a final call to action. The BBC Food and Farming Awards come to Titanic, Belfast this October, supported by Food NI and DAERA. The nominations are free. You can nominate yourself or someone else you know. The place to go is bbc.co.uk/food awards. The deadline is 12 noon on Monday, the 15th of June, 2026. So not that long away. And if there's one message from both Michele, Shirlow and Peter Hannan, it's this. Don't wait for somebody else to decide that your work matters. Open the curtains yourself.
Everybody, please nominate everyone and anyone you know. Put their name in the pot, because you will know somebody who's just, rearing a few pigs or doing this, that, whatever it happens to be in food and agriculture. Please just go on and pop the name on. We just have to come out to join the party. Just come out to play. You've taken for granted and underestimated a lot of what you do, and you maybe don't think it's as good as it is. I've been there, we've been there lots and lots of times. Hold your head up, be proud. Come out to the show. It's not about a competition. It's about a celebration. And that's kind of like bringing your drink with you. Come out and play. We're waiting for you. It's a hoolie. Let's make it a hell of a hoolie.
A hell of a hoolie.
A hell of a hoolie.
Food Stories from Here is written and presented by me, Clare McGinn. It's a Napoleon's Nose creative media production.